Good morning, students. Today we will discuss about epistaxis and its management. Epistaxis is defined as bleeding from the nose. It is one of the most common emergency dealt with by otorhinolaryngologists. Most cases are minor, self-limiting episodes or controlled by simple first aid measures. Only less than 10% of the patients need medical attention, in which some cases requires hospitalization and even surgical intervention for control of bleeding. As we know that nose is supplied by both internal and external carotid artery. We have already discussed the various branches of these arteries and its anastomosis. Caecilius plexus, situated anteroinferior part of the septum, where anterior and posterior ethmoidal arteries, sphenopalatine artery, greater palatine artery, and septal branch of superior labial artery anastomoses, causing anterior nasal bleeding. While Woodruff's venous plexus is situated on lateral wall posterior to the inferior terminates and causing posterior nasal bleeding. The sphenopalatine artery, a branch of maxillary artery that enters the nasal cavity through sphenopalatine foramen, is well recognized for posterior arterial bleeding and is called artery of epistaxis. Now come to classification. So epistaxis is classified in several ways, like epistaxis in adults and in childhood. Secondly, it is acute and recurrent. Thirdly, it is localized or it is diffused, in which if it is localized, there is a certain point of bleeding, whereas in diffuse variety, whole of the surfaces can bleed. Now another is anterior and posterior. Another classification, maybe it is arterial and venous. So in venous, we can have bleeding from the retrocolumnar vein, or I have discussed about the Woodruff's venous plexus. Then it is primary and secondary. So in primary, cause is unknown, that is etiological, and it constitutes about 80% of epistaxis cases, while in secondary it is about 20% case, and where the cause is known. Just to see, in anterior epistaxis, it is more common. This is anterior part of the nose. The anterior epistaxis is from this part, anterior part of the nose, and this is more common. It occurs in children and young adults. usually due to nasal mucosal dryness and crusting, leads to epistaxis. Trauma is another cause where anterior bleeding comes mostly. It is alarming as bleeding seen readily. Patient is afraid to see the bloods coming from the nose, but generally it is less severe. While in posterior epistaxis, this is posterior epistaxis, usually in older people where hypertension and arteriovenous diseases are the most cause. It is significant bleeding is there from the posterior part of the nose going to pharynx, nasopharynx, through nasopharynx, and it is more severe and treatment is more challenging. It needs more procedures to do to control the bleeding. Now comes the causes of epistaxis. So there is local cause. Causes are divided into different groups. It may be congenital, where hereditary telangiectasia is the cause. Second is trauma, in which nose picking is the most common. Other cause of trauma may be facial and skull bone fractures. Even foreign body, iatrogenic trauma, heart blowing or violent sneezing even. Third cause is inflammatory, where the infective rhinitis and chronic sinusitis, these are the causes of inflammatory in origin. Then comes the specific. It is either acute or chronic. In acute, diphtheria is the cause, whereas in chronic, it is granulomatous disease like tuberculosis, leprosy, syphilis, or rhinosporidiosis. Non-specific causes may be viral. It is common cold, influenza, bacterial, secondary bacterial rhinitis, sinusitis, then fungal rhinosinusitis, atrophic rhinitis. Some of the physiological causes are also they are high altitude, extreme cold or hot climate. Then comes the neoplastic cause. It is benign and malignant. In benign, juvenile angiofibroma, angioma of the septum, capillary and cavernous hemangioma. Then malignant cases, squamous cell carcinoma, olfactory neuroblastoma, nasopharyngeal carcinoma. Then comes the miscellaneous causes of epistaxis. They include deviated septum and aspar, rhinitis sicca, atrophic rhinitis sometimes, then a spontaneous rupture of vessels, rhinoliths. So these are the causes of local origin. Now come to systemic causes, where Hypertension is the commonest cause, especially in older people. It is posterior bleeding. It causes posterior bleeding, and the most common cause of epistaxis in elderly people is hypertension. Then comes the cardiac causes, the CCF, mitral stenosis, then pulmonary cause, COPD, liver diseases, cirrhosis causes vitamin K deficiency, then renal causes nephritis. There are drugs history also, excessive use of salicylates, anticoagulants, they causes epistaxis. Then comes the coagulopathies, like the clotting disorders, bleeding disorders, agranulocytosis, leukemia. I've already seen vitamin K deficiency, then exanthematous fevers. Hormonal factors are also there. There is vicarious menstruation, endometriosis, granuloma gravidarum. So these are the systemic causes. And idiopathic, of course, I have already said to you that the most of the cases are idiopathic in nature. Now come to when you deal with the cases of epistaxis, you have to know some history from the patient. It is whether it is previous bleeding episodes or the first time it bleeds. What is the onset, duration, frequency, amount of blood loss? Then comes any history of trauma, any familial history of bleeding, hypertension, to know about any heart disease, hepatic disease, renal diseases, any drug history, or any other medical ailments, and of course the menstrual history is also important. Now come the management. So before managing the cases of epistaxis, some investigations are also important, like complete blood count to know about the anemia, leukemia, thrombocytopenia, bleeding time, clotting time, prothrombin time, partial thromboplastin time. Then some radiological investigations like X-ray chest, computed tomography, CT scan, magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, and angiography. So these are the investigations we have to perform to know about the general conditions of the patient. You have to measure the blood pressure of the patient also, if patient is elderly. Then general examination you have to do. Then comes the local examination to know about the how we will see the patient? First, it should be general observation of the patient. Then comes the anterior rhinoscopic examination, in which we can assess, if possible, the site of bleeding by removing the blood and blood clots. We have to localize the site of bleeding. Posterior rhinoscopy may also help to know about the cause of the bleeding. Now, nasal endoscopic examination is common to know about the site of bleeding and in treatment. Now comes the management. Now, treatment of epistaxis starts from the first aid, where the airways, bleeding and circulation is, that is ABC, is shown. Another method is Totter's method to control the bleeding. So Totter methods, where the patient sits bending the head forward, pinching the nose for 5 to 10 minutes. During this time, patient opens his or her mouth and breathes quietly. To natural vasoconstriction, the ice pack is also applied over the nose. It causes vasoconstriction, leading to controlling of the blood. Then, if patient responds well, there is no further treatment. If it comes to you have to localize the part of bleeding in the nose and then do cauterization. So in cauterization, various methods are there. First is chemical cautery. It is done usually by the AgNO3, silver nitrate solution, it is applied with some stick to the local points where the bleeding occurs. Another thing is TCA, which can also be applied during the chemical cauterization. Then electric cauterization. You can control the bleeding by electric cautery, just to touch the point of bleeding. It is burnt there, it causes burnt there, and the bleeding is stopped. Third is endoscopic, where the endoscopy is introduced in the nose, seeing the site, and then by unipolar or bipolar cautery, it is cauterized. Then the second method is of nasal packing. It is done by interior packing or by posterior packing. So first, the interior packing, where interior bleeding is occurring. In this, we use medicated gauze, about 1 meter ribbon gauze is made. It is soaked with antiseptic ointment like soframycin with some liquid paraffin is applied to soften the gauze ribbon, and it is introduced with the help of Thuticum nasal speculum and Tilly's forceps. Some of the part is remain outside the nose so that it cannot hang in the nasopharynx, and by layer it is introduced deeply into the nose, and just you see in the figure, it is layer wise introduction of the ribbon gauze, and lastly the whole of the nasal cavity is packed. It can be done bilateral also to give more pressure over the bleeding site. By this method we can control the interior bleeding of the nose. Some of the surgeons, they prefer this horizontal, some are this vertical packing, they like it. There are some, this is Meroshield. It is a spongy material. It is already made by the companies. They provided it for controlling of the blood. So just you see, this is a stick-like material which is introduced by the Tilly's forceps into the nasal cavity, and with the normal saline solution it is soaked. It gradually swollen and fully occupies the nasal cavity. It controls the bleeding properly. These nasal packs are left for 24 to 48 hours usually. After then it is removed. In maximum cases we see the bleeding is controlled by this method. Then comes the posterior nasal packing. In posterior nasal packing, there are conventional methods and newer methods also. Newer equipments, they provide better packing methods. In conventional type, we make a roll of gauze piece, compacted one, where the two threads are made. Sometimes another third thread is also be there. By the help of rubber tube be introduced, rubber tube in one of the nostril, and it is taken from the mouth with the help of RT forceps, come out from the mouth. We attach or bind it with the one of the string of the posterior pack. Another tube from the another nose, it goes also taken out from the mouth. Another string is attached with that, and then come thus pulling the rubber tube from the nose. The whole of the pack goes inside the nasopharynx, where it is tightly placed in the nasopharynx. The bulb is placed in the nasopharynx. You keep some prevention there due to clenching of the teeth. Your finger may get injured. So, a tongue depressor is placed to enter jaw space so that patient may not clench the teeth. You placed well the bulb, posterior bulb you have made inside the nasopharynx. Then the two strings that should be bind anteriorly at the columella and both of the nose, because if the posterior bleeding is occurring and you are not aware the side where the right or left side, then you have to pack both sides of the nose. This controls the bleeding maximum times. Another method is catheter application method, where the posterior bleeding is occurring. It is not controlled by the anterior packing, and we use posterior packing by the help of catheter. So just you see in this case where the catheter is introduced in the nose and the bulb is inflated with the help of air. It is about 15 to 20 ml of blood, 15 to 20 ml of air is introduced into the tube catheter, where it balloons up and closes whole of the nasopharynx. It is pulled anteriorly and bind there. You can apply the anterior pack as shown here, and this controls the posterior bleeding. Another ballooning method is a newer method where it is balloons. Balloons are here. Here two balloons are there. One is for posterior part, it is nasopharyngeal part, and this is for nasal part. Here it is about 10 ml of the air is pushed. Here about 30 ml of air is pushed. This balloons up. Here it is also made, there is patency of the tube to take breath properly. So these are the newer methods where we can control the posterior and anterior bleeding. So the patients on nasal pack should be advised best to place patient on antibiotic. Some antibiotics should be given to decrease the risk of sinusitis and toxic shock syndrome. Patients are advised to avoid straining, bending forwards, or removing pack earlier. If another nostril is unpacked, then they are advised to drop some saline drops or gel to moisturize the nasal mucosa. And if needed, the patient is admitted and monitored in several cases. So, if the conservative measures are failed in the treatment of controlling the bleeding of epistaxis, then surgical procedures needs. The surgical procedures having ligation of the responsible arteries. It is external carotid artery ligation, maxillary artery ligation, then ethmoidal arteries ligation, and specifically sphenopalatine artery ligation. So in external carotid artery ligation, ligation of the external carotid artery just above the origin of the superior thyroid artery is done. In maxillary artery ligation, we have to approach to find out the maxillary artery by Cardwell-Luck operation, where the posterior wall of the maxillary sinus is removed and then the maxillary artery is identified in the pterygopalatine fossa. It is blocked by applying clips or tied up to control the bleeding. Then ethmoidal arteries are also being ligated. It is ligated by external ethmoidal incision approach, that is also called Lynch incision. But the most important ligation nowadays is preferred and very specific is transnasal endoscopic sphenopalatine artery ligation, where the procedure can be done with rigid endoscope under topical anesthesia with sedation or in general anesthesia. A mucosal flap is lifted in posterior part of the lateral nasal wall, where the inferior meatus ends. Sphenopalatine artery is assessed there, that is coming from the an opening, that is sphenopalatine foramen. You just identify this artery there, sphenopalatine artery, and just clip it and then cauterize it to show the control of the bleeding. And lastly, you can apply there the gel foam also, and then the mucosa is reposed there. So this is the newer method of ligation of specific sphenopalatine artery. Then comes another method of embolization. It is done with the help of interventional radiologists where a catheter is passed through the femoral artery, and just to introduce it to go up to the maxillary artery, internal maxillary artery, where it is packed with absorbable gel foam or polyvinyl alcohol. By this method of embolization, you can control the bleeding, but there is some sort of risk regarding the thromboembolism and hematoma formation at local site. So there is risk of these two things. Otherwise, this is a safe procedure. Ethmoidal arteries are usually not embolized. Some newer methods of management of epistaxis are laser application, coagulation therapy, and harmonic technology. So these are the newer techniques how to manage a case of epistaxis. Then comes two things which is related with the epistaxis. One is the myiasis, where there is history of bleeding of the nose and at the same time there is irritation of the nose, and when you will examine there is movement of the insect that is houseflies larva there, that is causing bleeding. So you have to keep in mind also. Another method is hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia, where the bleeding occurs from the interior part of the nasal septum and is caused by recurrent bleeding. It is treated by laser methods, and it is sometimes required septodermoplasty operation to control the final bleeding, recurrent bleeding from the nose. Some another operations for SMR, when the spur especially bleeds, then SMR operation is suggested for controlling of the blood. Thank you.